So we're going to start off by talking about a high support, high control environment. So in my classroom at school, I like to have a high support. Those kids know I love them. When they come in the morning, they know they stand at the door and they do not come in the classroom until Mrs. Kelly is there and says, "Good morning, Luke. Good morning. Good morning." And they know they don't go in the classroom until they say good morning back. They have to stop. No, you didn't say good morning. They have to say good morning back to me. So that high support is really important, that your kids know they are the most important part of your life, of course, aside from Jesus and from the love of your husband or wife. But the next thing, they're the best thing since sliced cheese. But
Veggie cheese.
Veggie cheese, thank you, honey. All right, sliced bread, thank you.
My wife does.
Sliced bread, that's safer.
My wife doesn't hardly ever eat a piece of cheese, ever, but.
Thank
all right,
you.
so. So here's the deal. Conservative religions tend to be high control environments. All right? If I had a big chalkboard and I drew a big plus sign on it, the top would be high support, the bottom would be low support. The right side of the plus side would be high control, and the left side would be low control. If you get a low control, low support quadrant, almost nothing good happens there. You get a let's say you get a high support, low control environment, which is where most American parenting is. Everybody's supposed to feel so good. You may have done a D+ job, but you're an A+ winner. No, that's not reality. It's phony, generational, societal flattery that doesn't really give internal rewards like actually achieving. If you have a high control, low support environment, which can be where conservative religious homes are, there's really not a lot of motivation. Low support, low encouragement, low edification with high control is going to yield frustration. It's going to yield usually rebellion or rejection. But if you can get into the quadrant where everybody knows they're very loved, they're meaningfully integrated, and you expect them, I would say, a good name's rather to be chosen than great riches. I say to my kids, hey, you're a Kelly, and we're not behaving like that. And what's happened in well-functioning organizations have a lot of support. There's a lot of joy and meaning in being a part of it, but there's a high expectation. We expect excellence. It's not manipulation. I'm not talking about manipulation here at all. I'm talking about genuine love and support with a high caliber of performance. And those people have what's intrinsic. It's an intrinsic self-respect. If you don't have an intrinsic self-respect, you can have people praise you all day long, but you need the inner voice of the Holy Spirit to affirm what people have said to you because it's true. And you could fail wonderfully. But if you fail wonderfully and you're loved and supported because you did your best, it's okay. You learned something.
And I want to encourage you as parents or grandparents, you just want the best your child can do. If the best your child can do is a C and they did their best, you should really be happy for them.
Well, and I'm talking standing next to an educator here. Half of your kids should never appear in a college. They are not bound for college. They're not gifted for it. They're gifted to do something every bit as significant and valuable that's different. How many of our kids should be going into a trade? Or how many of our kids should be choosing something that doesn't need a 4-year education to do it? And really, the new school I'm doing at AMI, I want the kids to be able to go on to college if they want. We are not opposed to education formally, but we believe education is much bigger than that. All right? So our early pioneers were not formally educated, but they were highly educated. The disciples that followed Jesus were not formally educated, but they were highly educated. And I think we're going to have to get off of this mentality and expect that we don't set some people up to feel like they're half people because they're not high academic performers.
But you do want your child to feel totally loved and cared about by you, that you really love your kids, and that you expect them to do their best.
Yeah.
And if your child comes home and they could have made the A's and the B's and they're getting the D's and the F, there's nothing to be proud of about
All right,
that.
but you can ruin your child if somehow they're the measure of your parental success. Your children are not the measure of your parental success. James Dobson's dad used to say, don't take all the credit if they turn out good, don't take all the blame if they turn out bad. Look, obviously what you put into them matters. But if you're wearing it as a constant measuring device because you're an insecure parent, you're going to mess them up. So do the best you can. And what I like to remind my kids is I didn't do everything perfectly, but I loved you the best I could love you and did the best I could. And by the way, you know, what's that old poem by Alexander Pope? Our wiser sons think us, no, our sons think us fools, so wise they grow. Their younger children will no doubt think them so.
Say it again.
Am I saying it right? Our wiser sons think us fools, so wise they grow. No, their wiser children will no doubt think them so. In other words, what goes around comes around.
That's easier.
I probably am messing up the quote. So here's the deal. Don't take yourself too seriously. Be wholeheartedly in. Be able to laugh at yourself. And don't wear every child decision up and down. Your kids are going to do things to embarrass you. You want to be embarrassed? Have kids, all right?
And the
That's
more
just
you
how it
have,
works.
the more mistakes they can make, right?
All right.
So
Let's
think
roll
about
on.
how we must embarrass God sometimes, right? Like, oh, those humans, how do they do that? But he keeps working with us, and he's so kind to us, and we want to do the same for our children. We don't give up on them. I want to discourage you from doing too much in your life while you have kids at home. When I went back to teaching after being out 18 years, I was going to work on my master's degree. And I had a true friend say to me, basically, is this the time to be doing that? Do you want to do that now? And I didn't really appreciate it then. But I thought about it, and our youngest child was still at home in a more formative ages, and I decided it was not the right time for me to go back to school. And that's why just a few years ago, I graduated with my master's degree, and my husband started his doctorate how many times?
4 times. And I quit every time because I didn't have time because of my priority system. And my priority system was the family and the church. Finally, when I went to Village, I think I was probably in my early 50s, I started it. I graduated by the skin of my teeth, but it doesn't matter. I made it. And the truth of the matter is, formal education is the easiest way around true life education. And true life education is way more important. So please do not be measuring yourself by the world's false standards of value.
But develop yourself the best you can for the glory of God.
Right. Okay?
So one of the things we wanted to talk about was work. We believed in work, and we raised our kids to work. And Nathan, how old were you when you started detasseling corn? 14. Have any of you detasseled corn in here?
Yeah.
How many of you know what it is? Okay, a few. You want to describe it, honey?
Well, we come from the Midwest. I'm sure they grow corn in North Carolina, but in the Midwest, they grow corn everywhere. And you have to, in the old days, you had to walk along with your hands above your head all day and pull the pollinating tassel out of the top of the corn. Very, very unpleasant work.
It's exhausting. And that was his first real job away from working with the family. And then, was it a year or two later, and we started KBLC?
Kelly Brothers Lawn Care.
Yeah.
Which should have been Kelly Mom and Dad's training to Kelly Brothers Lawn Care. My wife pushed a lawnmower for years.
I was so glad when I quit.
Well, actually, it didn't quit. They kept the business. She quit eventually, which was right. And they actually sold the business for some money, and it's still going. So I had to talk them out of spending their money on paintball guns and encourage them to invest it in a lawnmower. Unfortunately, I was persistent, and they eventually allowed it, and they had a wonderful business. And every Sunday, we were out mowing grass all day long, and it was good for them.
It was a family activity. Our daughter was too young, except maybe she picked up some trash, but I was push mowing. Our third son was so light, the mower seat, it was one of those safeties, the engine would cut in and out as he bounced along on the seat of the mower. But it was a family project, and we did it.
Yeah, and if we were
Ron
doing
would
it
teach
over,
the kids.
we'd make them push mow and we'd ride the lawnmowers. But anyway.
No, I like push mowing. But he taught the kids to do it for love, do your best.
Yeah, you work
not
for
just
love.
for the money. And
You do get paid, but you do, there was a wood flooring installer in Bering Springs who was killed in a tragic auto accident. And he said, treat them better than they deserve and give them more than they paid for. And in my opinion, that's a nice Christian motto. And whenever you serve only to get money, it's drudgery. But when you serve to do better than you have to and you care, it's service. I can't say that I succeeded at that overly, but I tried. And I don't know what the boys, I know some actually, Nathan's role is very relational. He cares deeply for his customers. One son's a physical therapist, and he takes the time to listen and talk. And the other son is a wood flooring contractor still. And I do think they try to take very good care of people. And I think it puts meaning in what you're doing. It's not just drudgery.
And the Jewish children years ago were raised so they had a trade that they could do. And I think it's not a bad idea still. Indiana Academy, we lived in Indiana at the time, had the CNA program that you could take to be a CNA.
Fantastic program.
And one of our sons,
yep,
the
one that's here right now, who deals with hundreds of visitors and guests and new people all the time. When he finally graduated, it was time for him to go get a job. I have permission to tell these stories, all right? I checked with him. Here he is, 16, 17? And we're going to go get a new job. He's going to go work at Harbor Manor, which is a nursing home. And I can still distinctly remember pulling up underneath the canopy and him not wanting to go in and talk to anybody. And I tried to talk to him, and he wouldn't. Finally, I said, this car is not moving until you go in and talk to somebody about getting a job. Now here he is, a vice president salesperson, talking to people all the time. But it was important for me as a dad that I did not let him take an easy road out of something that was awkward. And the awkward part was going in, talking to a full-fledged, adult woman nurse staff, manager. A lot of those kids that graduated out of that program were some of their best workers. They had excellent kids from Indiana Academy going through that. And by the way, CNA work is very hard work. But if you're loving and you're faithful, it's a beautiful testimony and witness to the people you're serving. And he met all kinds of older people that flew airplanes in World War II and all kinds of things. Really quite an enrichment to him, and the people loved the loving service.
Another thing I want you to think about is when we look at Jacob and all those 12 sons, what do you think was the really big problem between the brothers?
The 12 boys.
The 12 boys. If you could come up with one word, what would you say it was?
Yeah, jealousy.
Jealousy. And why? Favoritism.
Yeah.
Really important that all your kids know you love them with all your heart. Not this one's mommy's favorite and this one's daddy's favorite.
Yeah, that's a bad thing. Where do you want to go?
All right, let's talk about financial need. When I stayed home for 18 years and we lived on my husband's pastoral income, do you think we were well-to-do people? No. We had a church member who would share clothes with our boys. And the boys got old enough that they didn't really want to be wearing hand-me-downs from other kids in the church. And they'd say, where did those clothes come from? I'd say, the Lord sent them to us. Well, they didn't really like that a whole lot. But the Lord always did take care of us, but we didn't have a lot of money. And Nathan can tell these stories to his younger siblings about, when I was growing up, because it was different. We had a mango, it got cut in 6 parts, and you got 1/6 of the mango. And now our daughter growing up, she could have the whole mango all to herself. But there's something about having to do hard work and go through hard times that makes you appreciate money in a different way than when it's just handed to you.
Yep, everybody should be poor for a little while, not on and on, but everybody should go without for a little while so you know what to do with what you got. And I found in pastoring the churches that I pastored that if you could discover collectively what God wanted you to do, have a little bit of faith, a little bit of sacrifice, it was like a flywheel, and God would get it going, and it would generate more and more and go a little bit faster. I want to come back to something you said. I want to make sure that you understand that in your life, in your schedule, there's only so much time. So we talked about extra education, but you have to be careful that when the kids are in a certain phase, you think they're going to be there forever, but they're not. And you just can't do too much. But the other thing we didn't say is you don't use your family as a reason not to be involved in church. You just get the whole family involved in the church. And so we brought our kids to work bees. We all came to prayer meetings.
The things the kids really hated were the anniversary celebrations. Do we have to dress up? Yes, you do. But there'll be cake there. You know, you try to make it sound appealing in some manner to little boys don't love baby showers either.
Neither do big boys.
And sometimes I see it at school. I'll have a student that if just one of the parents at home were really taking an interest, that child would succeed. But because they're too busy, not that they don't love their kids, but they're so busy with their own lives that nobody's making sure that things are happening. That child's falling through the cracks. And even though I try at school, there's only so much the teacher can do. The parents, it's really their responsibility, and they need to take it seriously. Some years ago, I said to Ron, what I wouldn't give, and it pretty much always makes me want to cry to say this, what I wouldn't give to have our kids back home for a few hours as little kids. It's a very precious time in your life.
Yeah, it is. I can tell you that in my pastoral life, I'm a very committed pastor, and I worked a lot, but I tried to be home for the meals. I worked with the boys on Sundays. You don't sacrifice the things you shouldn't sacrifice. Another thing that I think is important if you want to build kids that are ready for the future is that you teach them that they have to stick with things. Now, you need parental wisdom to know when you adjust course, but what we did with our kids was if they started Pathfinders, they finished it that year. You didn't have to sign back up the next year, but if you started something, you were going to finish it. Now, I quoted you Timothy Keller earlier today that if you stick with a marriage 5 years through the bad times, almost everybody says it'll be better at the end of those 5 years. I do a lot of premarital counseling, and when I do it, I say to somebody, what's going to make this marriage work? Now, some of you have gone through some pretty tough moments, and it takes two people to have a marriage. But what makes a marriage work? Love, 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 love. Yeah, you're right. Love makes it work. But I want to know what attribute of love is going to make this one work. Because about half of them aren't going to work. And I believe that percentage is higher as we go through the generational cycles. And here's the one word that's going to make this marriage work: commitment. Now, that's not commitment that denies dysfunction. That's actually commitment that wisely, prayerfully faces the issues in the marriage. But everybody's not going to feel the same way about this thing at every day and every season of the marriage. And it is that actual sense that I will be there with you through this that actually helps you get through it. And so teaching people not to quit. Now, here's the bottom line. It's harder to teach someone to work than it is to just do the work yourself. Yeah, every mother knows this, all right? It's going to take you, and if you have several children, you're going to spend a lot of time teaching how to work.
Sometimes my fourth graders come to fourth grade and they've never used a sharp knife before. Why weren't they cutting up vegetables for soup at home?
Sometimes it's out of fear. And there are mothers out there, sometimes could be fathers, that are limiting their children's opportunities for fear that something's going to happen. Well, if you haven't discovered already, if you have kids, something is going to happen, okay? The question is, what is it going to be? And fortunately, God usually doesn't let it all come at once, and it doesn't all pile up.
I was thinking about pets. What do you think about the pet scene?
Well, I actually believe that pets have a high value to a child's development in a couple ways. One is love, and the two is work. And feeding and cleaning up after a pet is a daily responsibility. I actually think God put us in a garden in the beginning for a reason, because this kind of work was good for us. The Bible says, woe unto you when you build house upon house. God never designed that you were in places where you didn't have engagement with nature and the kind of commitments and reward cycle that come from that.
It's extra work for you, but it's an investment in their lives, which is what most of parenting is. It's mostly extra work, but an investment in the next generation.
Okay? Something else that I think builds strong adults. Ellen White says that nature, the power of nature in and of itself, will have a softening and subduing nature on the lives of people. And at Village, one of the things we did was we had a sawyer there, and he cut out a bunch of sassafras wood for us. And we were going to build 1,000 bluebird houses. Now, we didn't build 1,000. We only built probably 600, 700 of them. But we had a great big work bee, and we had all these pieces pre-cut. And we put together hundreds and hundreds of houses, bluebird houses. And on the side of them, we put that quote from Ellen White. You must take your children out into nature because it's another expression of the Creator, and it has a peaceful, and if you go camping, camping is one of the best things for a family because it requires working together, plus it's in the out of doors, which is naturally engaging and exciting, and it has a beautifying effect on people's lives. Now, we were poor, and camping was the only way we were going to see the world. So I have never been, when I grew up in Illinois, the farthest I went on vacation was about 2.5 hours, or I went up to Wisconsin where my aunt and uncle had a cabin. That was the farthest I went. I was 30-some years old when I went to Yellowstone for the first time, and it was with my kids. We had an old Dodge van that had it had some kind of issue with the, what's the big thing in the transmission that's full of fluid that turns? Torque converter. Had a torque converter issue. And every time between like third and fourth gear, the thing would shudder. But that's what we drove out to Montana or to Wyoming. We had a little trailer, we had their bikes, we had tents, and it was really good for them. It's a lot of work, and when they're little, it's a lot more work. And I would take the boys canoeing in the north woods of Minnesota, and it teaches you resilience. There's no 7-Eleven, and your cell phone doesn't work, and we're all just going to have to work this out and be a little more careful.
Plus, we went to Lake of the Two Rivers. It's a provincial park in Canada, and I said it was Lake of the Two Rivers because one river flowed through one side of our tent and the other river flowed through the other side of our tent.
It
was
just rained
terrible.
and rained
It
and
rained so
rained.
much. And we ended up, I think you and Nathan slept in the back, and Andrew and I slept up front in the truck because it was so wet.
Yeah, it was a little
It's very
Nissan.
memorable. How many of you are campers? Okay,
Good,
you know
good.
it's a lot of memories, right? Some of them good, some of them like Lake of the Two Rivers. But when we went to Yellowstone, the campground host was camping kind of across from us, and they saw this family with the two little boys, and they called us over and showed us the grizzly bear prints that they were keeping so that people coming into the park could see them. And it's like, wow, it's amazing.
If you want to build healthy adults for the future, you have to model to them how to say you're sorry. When you make a legitimate mistake, you need to be able to model the fact that you acknowledge that you're wrong. I have met people who have never said they're sorry in their adult life almost. But one of the key things to developing a meaningful relationship is acknowledging that you're wrong. Earlier today, we went over how to resolve conflicts. But it's very important that you make mistakes. That when you make mistakes, you acknowledge them. Something else I want to say in, the years of parenting is that, recently I went through a rough relationship with the church, and I love the church, okay? I was released from employment in the Michigan Conference. I went through an experience similar to that when I was an active parent. So I was 35 years old, and there was
Not
a
the
crisis.
releasing.
I wasn't released. No, I've never been fired in my life until I turned 60, and then I got fired. I'm a hard worker, too hard of a worker probably. But I went through a period in my mid-30s where I had all the kids but one, maybe all of them, and the stress in my job turned me into a less quality parent. And during that period of time, I don't think I mean, looking back, I see it, and I was so frustrated with what was going on that my parenting suffered. What you need to know about raising children is they are very, very resilient. Now, there's a book entitled The 5 Signs of a Functional Family. Is it written by Chapman? Who writes that book? And it's an old book. But in the book, he tells the story of the child of a drunk. And the child of the alcoholic turned out to be a very, very responsible person. And so the author wanted to know what happened in your home that saved you from repeating this. Something along those lines. And this is what the story said. The man said that in spite of the trauma that was in my home, every night my dad would come by and tuck me into bed and kiss me and tell me that he loved me. So now, I don't know what challenge or trauma you bring from your family system's background, but I do want to tell you this. It is love, and it is a sense that one ritual every night, in spite of that man's alcoholic tendencies, the dad, that one ritual spoke a measure of strength and hope into that kid's life. And there is a high value on tradition. Now, we don't want meaningless rote tradition, but do you have any traditions in your home? Do you have grape juice on Friday night, or special bread that's been made? Or do you sing certain songs and only have certain food then? Do you celebrate? Or do you just come to the Sabbath and barely crash because you've overextended yourself so much that the Sabbath can't really be celebrated the same way because all you've done is barely survived from Sabbath to Sabbath? Some good traditions in there, you're creating security. And the kids will sometimes push against it.
I was going to say one of our sons dated a girl who it was very foreign to her to sit around the table and eat as a family. Like maybe on the holidays, they would sit and eat. And she came in our home, and I think it was just something kind of like new or different that people would sit around a table and eat together. But I encourage you to do it. It's a really great family tradition. Tell about how your family did that, even though you had some other stresses.
Well, even though my family life tended to fluctuate in the bottom half of the spectrum, every night we did sit down at a table together. And I had a position. My position was at the right hand of my father. And then next to me was my sister, and across the way another sister and a brother. And those were meaningful moments. And my mother would always tell us when my dad got home, go out and play. And she would spend time just with my dad. And that created a very strong structure for their marriage to the best it could be with the value system they held.
All right, let's think about birth order. Who are our firstborns in the room? How many firstborns married a younger sibling from their family? Are you married? How many firstborns are married to a firstborn? Okay, some of you are. You married a firstborn. How many of you firstborns married a firstborn? Let's see that again. Okay, some of you did. All right, good. All right. So I think there's something to be said about the developing of responsibility. That was another thing with Nathan. He had the younger siblings to help look out for. My mom is the oldest of 7 kids. And she had her younger 6 siblings to love on, be responsible for. And I think about twice, Nathan kind of saved Davy, our 3rd son. He had a Winnie the Pooh blanket that he absolutely loved. This was Davy. And one night he had gone to sleep, not in his bed at all, but I don't know if he was in a chair or on the floor. And one of those window candles, I think that's what it was. It got melting the fleecy blanket, And it was just about to the point where it was going to burn our son, and Nathan came up. He was sleeping outside Nathan's room. Nathan came in and saw him, and he's like, oh. And I still have the blanket as a proof of how the blanket melted, but God saved our son. Used Nathan. Also, when Davy was a little guy, about 4 years old, 3.5, we were up in Maine at the summer camp, and Davy had on a life jacket, did not know how to swim, and somehow he got turning over and over and over in the lake, and Nathan reached down and pulled him up. You know, those older kids, they learn responsibility. Well, they should learn responsibility with their younger siblings. It's really important. Every part of the family needs to feel like they're important, whether you're the pinky or the fingernail on the pinky. You have a job to do, and that you're doing that job, and your family needs you to fulfill that position.
And earlier today, and we talked about this more than once, but I want to highlight it again. 2 things. Number one, there is nothing to replace self-respect in the life of a person. When that woman was at the well, she had had 5 husbands. What's that mean? In a patriarchal society, they all had rejected her. She was living with someone, which means they didn't want to make a commitment to her. Now she meets Jesus. He tells her he knows all the dark secrets of her life, but he goes about it in such a way that she trusts him. And what Jesus does is he gives her back her self-respect. Now, if you're lazy, you know, lazy is one of the cardinal 7 sins, sloth. If you're lazy, you cannot respect yourself the same way as if you are a contributor to society, whether it's in the home, whether it's in your own space, or whether it's somewhere else. Now, I want to combine this with another big deal, and I'm thinking especially of boys. All of my sons worked on the farm at Indiana Academy. It was the last functioning farm in one of our denominational schools. Not only did they learn to run the equipment, but they worked with a very respectable man. And if you want your kids to be ready for adulthood, as they mature, you have to make sure they're in a network of other people that will command their respect and reinforce your values. Now, it's risky to have your kids do things that could hurt them. And running tractors and bobcats and this kind of stuff, there is some risk involved there. But I was in Elmhurst about a month or so ago, and I was talking about Advent Mission Institute's new school. We bought a bulldozer. Does anybody here run a bulldozer? Yeah. It's not many. But you know, we have a bulldozer. We have a 55,000 pound. I mean, this is like a front end loader they would use at a gravel pit. It's huge. John Deere. To get into it, you have to get onto a platform that's almost 6 feet tall, just before you get into the cab. And I was standing there in Elmhurst explaining it. We're going to teach these kids how to run this equipment. And this 10-year-old boy sitting next to her mom says, "Mom, can we go?" You have to give people opportunities where they might make mistakes, but they get to do things that challenge and engage them. Otherwise, I can tell you that the virtual world will fill in all the gaps. Now, I've not met anybody. I was thinking as my wife was talking, I'm trying to think of the person who told me this story, but they were living in Berrien Springs, and there was something going on in the community. It was a Saturday night, and somebody called this person up. I think it might have been the person who gave us premarital counseling. I'm not sure. But anyway, they invited this man to go to the event, and the man said, "No, I don't want to go." His dad was helping him build a boat. A real-sized boat. The expansion of our natural gifts and talents in the engagement of learning something new. The human mind was made to grow throughout all eternity. So what happens when we don't keep engaging it at an appropriate level? It will find something. And if I never had to meet another 40-year-old man who was addicted to video gaming, I'd be a very happy pastor. But these things are designed to take advantage and hook. So if you want Quote, Education, page 213. The preoccupation of the mind with good is more than unnumbered barriers of law and discipline. Did you hear what I just said? The preoccupation of the mind with good is worth more than unnumbered barriers of law and discipline. Hey, protection and authority are all part of parenting, but if you'd like to be on the winning side, get your children engaged in things that will naturally keep drawing out the best in them. And you're not going to do that by squeezing your parenting into your leftover moments.
Proverbs 13:20 says, "He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed." Are your children making intergenerational friends? Are they coming to the church events? Are they speaking to the grandmas and the grandpas in the church? Are they going on mission trips or service projects? I don't know if you have homeless people in this area to feed, but are you taking your kids out to meet the broken people in our world who really need to be reached?
Yeah, and I was having a great visit here during lunch. If there's one thing that I wish we would have done more of as the Kellys, we had family worship every day. Mom and Dad practiced not perfect, but sincere Christianity. We taught our kids to work, to be respectful. We attempted to teach them how to have their own walk with God. But a good question was asked during lunchtime, and the dialogue that came out of it was this. If you'd like to save your kids from some of the things you came out of, allow them to vicariously experience them. How do you vicariously experience something? You put your kids in an appropriate environment up against people that are trying to get away from what you don't want your kids going into. In other words, when you're at these soup kitchens and you're serving, you're amongst these people whose cheeks are sunken in and their teeth are missing and all of this, it creates a natural opportunity for your kids to see humanity through the lens of compassion, and it shows them where A goes to if you don't check it. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. When it comes to some of these things, this is where you end up. Do you want to be there? Now, having said all that, none of this is a perfect inoculation to the prodigalism that is part of the human experience for some.
I wanted to talk to you about a couple things that I found helpful. One is John Rosemond's writings. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all. He's just so practical on things that work.
But he's a little dated, just so you know.
Oh,
but I
yeah.
think he's a Carolinian. I think he's from the Carolinas.
When we still had really little kids, he wrote Making the Terrible Twos terrific. And his ideas are just so practical. Also, Love and Logic. Love and Logic was also, I thought, something helpful to me as a mom. It's the, oh no, you didn't get your homework done and your room's a mess. I'm so sorry. Oh, that's really disappointing. Yeah, you won't be able to go to Pathfinders, will you? One is the sorry, one's not the, I'm so mad at you because you didn't get those things done. You should have done that. You are not going to Pathfinders tonight. The other is the, oh, I'm so sorry you didn't get those things done. Oh, that's so disappointing. Oh, I guess we won't be able to go to the park and play tonight. One doesn't drive your child away, the other way does.
Yeah, and my wife was much better at this than I was.
There's a reason one of us teaches fourth graders, right?
And actually, there's room for two different.
Absolutely.
There's supposed to be complementary, and there's a place for each one. But I wish I would have done better at that than I did. But I'm not actively parenting like I used to, and my kids are worried I'm going to be a terrible grandpa.
Yes, because he spoils the dogs terribly.
Yeah, they wonder what happened to me, but it's nice not being responsible for developing people. So, all right, are we about done?
I think so.
Okay, I think we're going to stop there. I know we have 5 more minutes, but we're going to call that good enough. Things to think about.
1 Kings 4:29.
All right, 1 Kings 4:29. What's it says? It says, "And God gave Solomon wisdom, exceeding great understanding, and largeness of heart like the sand on the seashore." You can sit and listen to somebody talk. It's all fine. points of reference, things to think about, conversations can come out of it, but we're just here to tell you something. People are too complex. We have 4 kids. They're all different. They've needed there are certain principles of parenting that remain the same, and there are unique adaptations to different children. And one last thing I'm going to say that I think is important that I wish somebody would have said to me earlier in my life. When you're parenting, you need to be able to distinguish the difference between high-handed rebellion and simple childhood proclivities. A child will do some things foolish just because they're a child. That doesn't mean they're outright defying you, even if they disobeyed you. And if you can distinguish the difference between what it is to be a typical, was it a typical teenager mistake? Was it a childhood mistake? Or am I dealing with an out-and-out rebellion? Usually it's not out-and-out rebellion. May the Lord help you all.
And that verse, 1 Kings 4:29, when you read the corresponding commentary in Prophets and Kings, she says that God will not only give it to Solomon, as he did, but to us, so that we will know it's both things, what to do and how to do it in a way that will please our Heavenly Father.
Yep.